This episode is brought to you by Audible. For a 30-day trial and one free audiobook, go to audibletrial.com/multiamory.
As men, the doing is hard to break.
Yes.
Your partner will reach up to participate, right, and you have to smack their hand. When she's taking from me, she'll just like, I'll reach up, I'll be like, oh, and it just smacks my hand down, and I'm like, oh yeah, right, I'm the fuck toy right now.
Yeah.
And loving it.
Yeah, and loving it. And then when you can really drop into that space, I honestly have never felt anything more nourishing sexually than being in a totally non-doing, pleasurable state.
If you're happy with the same old ways of dating,
If you enjoy sucking at communication,
And you have no desire to improve your romantic life, then our podcast might not be for you.
but if you want some out-of-the-box ideas to deepen your current relationships,
broaden your sexual horizons,
develop a better understanding of yourself,
or learn more about non-monogamy,
Then you've come to the right place. I'm Jase,
I'm Emily.
and I'm Dedeker.
and this is the Multiamory Podcast.
Forcing me to form myself to fit.
On this episode of the Multiamory Podcast, we're talking to Cosmo Meens and Melissa Mango about their work regarding pleasure-based touch and consent. And we're here on, this is going to come out the day before our final show of our North American tour.
Our LA show,
Our LA show, the final one, so we hope to see you all there. And also, we're recording this right after RelateCon, which we just attended and presented, along with Cosmo and Mango at RelateCon over the weekend here in Boise, Idaho.
Beautiful Boise, Idaho.
Yeah.
It is
Boise.
beautiful.
Yeah.
You can't see it, dear listeners, but we have a beautiful scene outside. It's
Yeah.
lovely.
So let's just get right into it.
Yeah.
We attended a workshop that Cosmo and Mango did that was connected to the company Happy Touch. Is that correct?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So
A snippet.
Yeah.
That was just the tiniest little appetizer.
yeah, and we all got to participate in it, and it was fantastic. And we've been talking about it for like a day since then.
Since then. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, for sure.
Yeah.
So it just kind of to start the scene, can you tell us a little about yourselves and what you do, why you were here, etc.? And you're about to actually do a couple classes after RelateCon as well. So kind of dive into that a little bit.
You want to go first?
Yeah, absolutely. I came down from Canada, and I'm a somatic sex educator in Canada. I also come from a history of being a chef. I've opened a number of restaurants, all health-related and pleasure-based as well.
Nice.
Cool.
I'm visiting Boise, Idaho for the first time. Came by invite from beautiful Melissa Mango, and we've collaborated. So we did 2 workshops together at RelateCon. One was based on relating games that that Mango's been practicing and doing in workshops for quite some time.
Couple years, yeah.
The other one is, like we said, a little snippet of some work that we do with Happy Touch. Happy Touch is a company that I have in Canada with my wife, Caitlin K. Roberts, and we're launching an app with that company connecting sex educators with clients.
Nice.
And so we also are a platform that basically brings anything around pleasure and consent and sexuality to the forefront, making it really accessible. And yeah, we're here. We're loving it. We're having fun. We're about to do a 2-day workshop, a full intensive.
Oh, wow.
Kind of a 2-day version of the snippet we did at RelateCon.
I see.
Yeah.
A lot more
And just
elements.
to go into it a little bit further, to give people more opportunities to explore and more time for processing. As you see, you've been talking about it for the last day.
Right. Yeah. We've been doing
There's
a lot of
that
processing.
comes out
Yeah.
with very simple stuff that we're working on.
Yeah, and that was only
That-
like an hour and a half
Yeah.
that we got to
Yeah.
spend with you. So
Yeah, so that's a little snippet of me. If there's anything I missed, let me know. But Mango,
Sure, we'll
maybe.
get to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm Melissa Mango. I am starting to get my voice back. I'm originally from Boise. I actually moved here like in my early, like right out of high school, and then ended up, going and actually I was a private chef as well. I've had a restaurant in LA, Redondo Beach, actually, a
cool.
Ruffalo restaurant. And that's how kind of I met Cosmo. we worked as a team in that whole pleasure-based raw food scene.
Yes.
And and
big
that's
into
a huge story. But
Cool.
That's a fun story.
That's a really fun
Not
story
for
too,
today.
but not today. Yeah. So out of chefing and the raw food scene, I became a clinical hypnotherapist because I was really helping people shift patterns in their life around diet and exercise and, how they want to take care of their bodies and stuff. And that turned into something different. Clients started visiting me around issues with their sexuality, hang-ups. I don't know if it's just something I kind of draw in or people feel really comfortable with me. But when I started helping people really explore their sensuality and open up and shift things on that level, I thought, wow, this is way more exciting to talk about than kale and the protein content.
Yeah.
And
That is pretty exciting stuff.
That is really exciting.
Let's do it justice.
Yeah, it's really exciting, but something else was inside of me of like, wow, this is something I actually want to study beyond my own training for myself or exploration. So then I went to San Francisco Sex Information School and got some basic things because I didn't know how I was going to use the education or where I was going to go. Was I going to become a sex therapist? I didn't really know. So I started there and then realized, combining the sex education, which was pretty basic, and then combining the hypnosis, there was another element I was exploring and just seeing naturally, and that's where the somatic sex education came in. So that's like a body-based, erotic, pleasure-based practice.
Wow.
And then Cosmo and I were kind of met up at another point, reconvened again, and thought, wow, let's continue,
Yeah, we
learning,
did the
exploring.
intimacy training program, which was like a week-long mini version, kind of like the snippet we did at RelateCon. This was a mini version of intimacy training that we did with a mentor of ours, Kath and Jase. And we just both went, whoa, this is our work. This is what we're supposed to be doing. And just collectively and individually decided to dive deeper and take the full somatic sex educator training program, which is hosted in Canada, and then the American version is sexological bodywork training.
Which is based in San Francisco. And I really wanted to study with Cosmo and Kaffin specifically. And so I ended up going to Canada for that training. But so I have a private practice in Nevada City, California. And I also travel a bit, RelateCon, and go to different places and bring, what I do to little communities. I also do Sensuous Society, which is a kind of a community that I started of people that want to explore their sensuality. So we get together and have like events. We learn things like how to do rope, how to make it safe and exciting.
Oh, wow.
We explore all kinds of things, really. How to take care of your cycle and really make the choice if you want to become a parent, for example. So I bring in other experts because it's all things that I'm interested in, and I would really like to mix it up and have other people present to the community. So
That's amazing.
Very cool.
Yeah, you were mentioning something when we were talking before about that, and I thought this was really cool. But the idea of, a lot of people out there might be interested in trying some sort of kink, BDSM something, right? Like some rope play, like you mentioned, or spanking, or some kind of power exchange. But that when you Google that, you get these really extreme things, or you go to like an open house type thing at a dungeon or something.
And you're like...
And it's people performing these really intense scenes. And you're just like, I'm terrified. I don't know what to
Or you
do.
watch 50 Shades of Grey and get this whole other idea of what it's all about.
So I like bringing in teachers that really teach you maybe like how to do the knots and then how to be connected with your partner, which looks very different than the scenes that you see in a dungeon. Like how to get in your body and actually build intimacy using this object like a rope or like a switch or a flogger or something like that. So that way you can choose the experience you want to have. You can have something very light and sensual and just play with like that, or you can make it really extreme. But the point is to have the full buffet to pick from.
And it's starting out small by offering people an opportunity to explore these things. This is all fairly new territory for me as well. And which is why I like the accessibility, because I had images of what I thought kink and BDSM and rope play was about prior. And then when I was exposed to it, I was like, wow, this is a completely different thing. There's tons of intimacy, tons of connection, tons of opportunity to slow down and feel into your body, which is a lot of what we practice personally and teach about. So the first time I ever played with ropes was actually with Mango after after our training, and you hosted something with Max from Seattle.
Right. So I had a specialist, come in and teach, and then I was really excited to show.
And she brought these ropes and this stuff, and she's like, "Here, let me show you." And she
and it was nothing like elaborate.
No, it was all decorative.
It
was like, and then I just fell in love. I was like, wow, like those ropes look really beautiful on your body.
Yeah.
And it was very decorative. And interestingly enough, I just was very excited about that. I shared that. And it showed me the stigma around that, because what I got back was people unfriending me on Facebook, saying you shouldn't be posting that kind of stuff. And this was just a picture of Mango's back with rope on decorative rope on it. Right. So I found that very interesting, and I had to then again reflect on how I present in social media in regards to various things, just to be aware of the stigmas that are attached to some of this stuff, and start to slowly, hopefully, break down, and that's where the accessibility piece comes in as well.
Yeah, I know for myself that for so long when I was younger, when I was trying to figure out what am I into, what kind of sexual being am I, what kind of kinks do I have, that I definitely had this perception with kink or any kind of BDSM or bondage or anything. And I think this was probably very much led by mainstream pornography. My perception was like, it has to be extreme. Right. Like if you're going to enjoy this, you have to enjoy a lot of pain, a lot of intense sensation, a lot of extreme subjugation. And like, that's what it is to enjoy this. Right. And so for a number of years in my early 20s, I was like, okay, I guess I'll try to do it and like kind of try to find the parts that I like and kind of endure the rest, without realizing that something that the both of you mentioned in your workshop, that the idea of there being a palette of sensation within any kind of touch palette. Exactly, whether it is rope play or bondage or not, just any kind of sensual touch, that there's this huge spectrum that again I think that a lot of people don't realize, and that it's okay to find this more nuanced, more complex experience and sensation within these experiences.
Right. And people have a choice to really decide where they want to take the sensation, what really works for them. Yeah, that's beautiful.
I really quickly want to take a little bit of a sidestep because I want to talk about the name of your company, Happy Touch. Because I'll be honest, when I first read, the name of your workshop was Happy Touching, like exploring, taking for your pleasure, something like that. And when I read Happy Touching, I was like, this sounds like a kid's workshop maybe, but like it involves touching. And so I'm like, I don't know about that. But then like when I gave it another look and I was like, okay, no, Happy Touch, like something that's like positive and pleasurable and not necessarily sexual. So tell me a little bit behind your decision to name your company that way.
Yeah, that's a really, really fantastic question. So it came to me I was taking Like a Pro, which is Betty Martin's training for educators to learn about the wheel of consent, which is a type of language that Betty and chart really that Betty developed and teaches. And so there's a lot of the work that we do has a foundation in the wheel of consent. And you can put links up to Betty's work, and there's tons of footage on there. Yeah. And so I was doing the training, and I was just like in my body exploring and being like, what are we really practicing here? What is this that we're doing? And even though we're exploring sexuality, the reality is that sexuality is a gateway to having more life force and thriving in the rest of your life. And so as I was feeling into that, I'm like, well, how is this accessible to people? What is this really about? And it's about just feeling good about touch. And so much of our lives, we maybe are touched non-consensually. Maybe we haven't even created the idea of consent within our body and created this idea that we're autonomous beings, that we also have to have trust with ourselves. And by creating some boundaries for ourselves, our bodies trust us. And then once we are within our boundaries of consent, then we can explore this happy touch. And it doesn't necessarily have to be sexual. And I'm glad that you brought up about children. I have young children, and I teach them these principles too, just in regards to brother and sister touching in a gentle way. Don't touch people when you're angry. Touch people when you're happy, and ask them if they're allowed. And so this is, I love the saying that like everything we needed to learn, we learned in kindergarten.
Yeah.
And like not separating ourselves as adults, you know, that sure, we as adults have different types of touch exploration, but that it also should be playful. We should embrace our inner child, that our
Don't take
bodies are
ourselves so
like,
seriously.
our bodies are playgrounds.
Yeah.
And so let's have happy touch in our playgrounds. Let's find language to be able to explore that type of touch. So that's where it came from. And that's like the name was really accessible. And eventually maybe there will be modules for teenagers and children and different levels, that it won't just be kind of connected to sexuality.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Wow.
Be great.
Yeah, I feel like that could be so needed.
Yeah.
For sure.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Get them while they're young.
Yeah, we got to start with breaking the stigma with
Exactly.
adults
Yeah.
Yes.
before we could ever approach, you know, obviously
Exactly.
adults then have the opportunity to take that and teach their own children.
Yeah.
And then eventually, potentially, there'll be that opening to bring that into schools or,
Yeah.
you know, there's a lot of opportunity there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
And
there
there's
was-
a lot around like consent. You and I were talking about that this morning, is that it's not just about accessing and finding a yes. It's really about really feeling what am I actually wanting? Is it a yes? Is it a maybe? Is it a no? You know, consent isn't about searching for the yes. It's
Or
about,
permission. It's about like mutuality.
yeah,
Right.
it's
Yeah.
the conversation together. You're accessing truth.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah.
It's about
Yeah,
that.
beautiful.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I was just the thing about children made me think of there was a consent workshop that I went to that was related to like a cuddle party group, and they did sort of a consent training for educators. And one of the things that they talked about was how from a very early age we're taught that we don't have autonomy, because there's the like, go hug your Aunt Susan.
Yeah,
it's like,
go
I don't
kiss
want to,
her.
and it's like, you don't get a choice. Go hug her anyway, or go give her a kiss, or whatever it is.
And that those messages land in the body and then they play out in your life. Like I can't, if someone else, you know, makes a decision for me on some level, you know, you've kind of follow that.
Yeah, you have to
And then
do
you
it.
see how
Yeah.
that plays out, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And it really goes back to this concept. I mean, something that I really love to, well, first of all, it really means something in my body, but it's around caring. It's like, do I care what this body that I'm coming into contact with feels? That's
Yeah.
what consent is. So that we were
Yeah.
talking about that mutuality. So why as adults would we want to hug a child that wasn't feeling like they wanted to hug us?
Right.
Totally.
Right.
What is
Yeah.
that about?
Yeah.
You know?
Definitely.
And do we want to allow space for people to come to us,
Yeah.
not for us to force ourselves on people,
Totally.
but just
Right.
find that mutuality of coming together. What a beautiful thing when a child runs to you and hugs
Yeah.
you because
Exactly.
they want
'Cause they
to.
want to.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, there's a big
Exactly.
difference between
Yeah.
that and the other thing.
for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
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 I feel like that's a good segue.
Right. So during the workshop that we did yesterday, was that yesterday or was that 2 days ago?
2 days ago.
Okay, it all runs together. I can't
Yeah.
even keep it
Yesterday was
straight.
a bit of a blur.
Yeah, it was a bit of a blur.
Ago.
Yeah.
One of the things that we talked about was like when addressing consent and when you're asking someone else that you want to do something with them, is first getting clear on the question of like, who is this for? And that was something that I'd actually heard before when someone was talking about with kink stuff. If someone asks like, oh, you know, would you like to do this type of thing together? And the question they respond with is, well, who is this for? Is this for me or for you? And then based on that answer, it might affect how they would answer and how they'd proceed. And I was just sort of like, that makes sense, I guess, but it's a little bit confusing and seems very, I don't know, inorganic or something. But then during your workshop, you presented it in a way that to me at least felt much more conversational, much more organic, and just kind of working that understanding into the way you're talking about stuff. I was wondering if you could kind of give us like that sort of quick rundown on sort of the may I versus would you like?
Yeah.
You like me to take that?
Go for it, yeah.
Yeah, I love this one. And
Yeah.
the most simple description of this is when one person offers to give someone a massage.
Right.
And this
they
could
s-
happen in a club,
Yeah,
a dance club.
at a cuddle party, just at a dinner party, having, even with a partner. I mean, just sitting watching a movie.
Right.
And one person's idea of what the massage looks like might be very different from what the other person's idea of what the massage looks like. So someone says, would you like a massage? And a really natural question could be, who is this for? Whereas we don't often ask that. Instead, the person that's receiving the massage might say, sure, maybe they don't actually want a massage. And if you ask the question, who is it for, then maybe the person that's receiving the massage might say, well, if this is for me, I want you to massage my feet for 10 minutes. Mm. And then the person giving the massage would say, is that a gift that I want to give? Was that my intention in offering the massage? Mm. So if the person that's offering the massage actually wants to touch your body for their pleasure, then the question should be, may I give you a massage for my pleasure? In that case, you are then giving them a gift. You're giving them the gift of your body for them to touch however they want, within reason, within your boundaries. You could say then, yes, I will give you that gift, but please avoid my breasts and my throat. Mm-hmm. Or something specific. Mm-hmm. You would give them some parameters in which that gift can take place. Rather than getting into this position where you say, sure, and they're giving you a shoulder massage, which is turning into sort of a upper breast massage, and their fingers are sort of dancing closer to your nipples, but you didn't really say that, and the next thing you know, they're trying to have sex with you. Yeah. Right. And even if this is your partner, you might be like, I want to watch the movie, fuck off.
When this was happening in the workshop, when you were discussing this, I was like, this happens so often to me, and then all of a sudden there's a dick in my ass.
So I was like, would you like a massage? And then there's a dick in my ass.
And that's where when we really get down to it, we talk about like that yes, without clarifying whose it's for. There's murkiness.
Yeah, definitely.
Around even within trusting your own body. Because you said yes, and then you're like, I don't want the dick in my ass right now. Yeah. But somehow I ended up here. Yeah. And then you get into a place of like potentially even with partners being in a victim-victimizer position that is really muddy and can create a lot of stuff that just by asking those simple questions with, maybe doesn't seem organic at first. Maybe it's a little clunky in language at first, but it's way clunkier to then feel like you've somehow either victimized yourself or been victimized by a partner, new friend, lover, or whatever. So that little bit of clunkiness in the beginning to clarify who it's for can create so much fun too, because like when you give yourself as a gift to someone and you know that you're giving your body as a gift to them for their pleasure, what I've found is that all of a sudden there's this beautiful purpose, this effortless purpose that, just being is enough. Just being is giving a gift of pleasure to someone. But unless you've clarified that, you may not even in your own body really understand what you're doing.
Well, I feel that leads into something that I want to talk about, which is that specifically this workshop that you facilitated was specifically about the act of taking for your own pleasure. And even that phrase, I think, can be so activating to so many people, the idea of like taking something from someone else.
That's why I chose it.
It's provocative for sure. And I think, again, like in the massage example, the idea of, are you giving me a gift of like, you truly want to massage my shoulders and get rid of my tension and make me feel good, or do you want to feel my body? And I think it's really interesting, something that I think I uncovered in the workshop is that that's not necessarily a bad thing as long as it's communicated about. That again, if a partner is at least clear with me, I want to give you may I give you a massage? Because like I love your body and I really want to touch it and feel it and it's really arousing to me. And then again, giving me the opportunity to be like, can I give that gift right now? Like, can I let you take right now or not? And if I can, then it's like, that's great. And again, like it doesn't create that sense of like, oh, this person kind of tried to take advantage of me in this situation. So I know that you've talked about the fact, you've referenced it's Betty Martin, right, in the Wheel of Consent, and that taking is part of the Wheel of Consent. Do you mind just giving a really quick and dirty sense of how taking fits into like the other ecosystem of this particular modality?
Yeah, so we have, I'm a really visual person, so that always helps. You have your chart
with you here.
So we've got the Wheel of Consent, and there's 4 quadrants, just like a pie. There's 4 slices, right? And there's serve, take, allow, and accept. And then in service, that's always going to benefit others, okay? And you're always going to be saying, yes, I will. This is what I'm giving the gift, right?
Okay.
When
You're saying yes, I will.
Yes,
if
I
you,
will.
if you can give.
If
that.
you can
Yes.
give it,
Yeah.
yeah. And then if you're in the taking quadrant, the action is for yourself. So oftentimes we'll be taking, but really we're trying to serve. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And you're always going to say, may I? Because you're asking for permission. You're asking for access. In allowing, did you have something?
Yeah,
Cosmo?
just to clarify that the muddiness sometimes in when you're giving an action. So the action when you're in service is going to someone that's accepting that service. When you're taking, it's going to someone that's allowing you to take. So the action is going in one way. With service, you're giving the gift to the person that's accepting, and with taking, actually, the gift is going from the allower to you. So the murkiness comes in when people go towards an action with the guise, let's say, of service when they're actually taking.
Yeah.
Right.
Like the massage example that
Exactly.
turns into
Exactly.
So they
actually
say,
just feeling your body.
I'm
Yeah.
presenting this option as though it's a service to you.
Right. And then it's like,
But it's not a service. I'm taking from you for my pleasure.
Yeah.
Right.
That's where it
Happens.
gets muddy and you get outside of consent.
The example that comes to my mind to think of something that's maybe more directly sexual than a massage is I think about, if a partner asks me, may I go down on you, for instance. And I've definitely gotten some murkiness there where it's like sometimes I've had a partner approach me and it truly is like service. Like, I want to pleasure you. I want to give you an orgasm or 10 or whatever, And then sometimes where it has been like, I want to go down on you, but I want that to be the warm up to me fucking you or whatever. Which again, maybe I'm feeling like, yeah, that's great. Or maybe I'm not. But I don't know. Have you ever experienced that where?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's difficult to say no sometimes, and we got into that obviously too. But when it is under this, like, well, I'm about to do you a service, I'm about to go down on you, which feels good, right? But maybe you're in a space where you don't want that, and yet I don't know.
For me, usually it's like sometimes I'm in a space where it's like, yeah, I'll take you going down on
Sure,
me, but I don't know if I
don't
want to have
sex with you. Yeah,
and
along those
again,
lines.
that murkiness there of like, I want to say yes to this, but maybe the actual request I should be saying no to.
Well, and the idea that it's something that I feel so often is that if somebody is doing me a service, I have to service them as well. I have to automatically give them a blowjob then later, or let them fuck
there's
me.
a score there.
Exactly, because it has to be equal in that way, and I can't just simply be a being who allows themselves to just be given pleasure with nothing in return to the other person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And often with, when someone is saying, may I go down on you? And you can clarify and say, well, who is this for? Is it for you? Then you might set a time container and you say, yeah, you can go down on me for your pleasure for 10 minutes. I actually have a business meeting or I have something going on.
or I only want it to be this.
Yeah,
I only want you to
I'm not consenting to sex after, and I'm not agreeing to necessarily pleasure you as well.
Yeah.
But if you want to pleasure me for 15 minutes, great, have at it.
Right.
And if it is for you, then you'll know it's for you if you can give them direction.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I would like you to go faster, slower, please. And if their feelings get hurt, then it really was it for you?
No.
Right.
And so
Probably not.
then you'll know if you give direction and they say thank you, then you know it's really for you. So that's something that you can kind of negotiate too and build that language with your partner. Not everyone's going to have this language. So
and it can be sexy too. It doesn't have to be like, okay, we're going to follow
course.
this, and I'm going to shame you for not following the thing.
Yeah.
It can be like, ooh, I want to try this really hot thing with you. I want to really get into like our dynamics and you can make it playful.
Consent can be sexy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course,
absolutely.
We always
And the
try to bring that
training,
back.
the training each other too with your partners too, and even friends too, training each other around this is really beautiful.
Yeah.
It's really great.
Yeah. I wanted to get into, and this is potentially challenging just because it's men and women that I'm about to talk about, but I know as a female-bodied person, I have felt objectified, by men all of my life. And yet I have had a lot of partners who ask me the question or just say, like, I want to feel objectified by you in sex. and how often I say to myself, like, I have no idea how to do that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. We had a lot of conversations about this.
Sure.
Is it okay if I shared?
Yeah.
Did you want?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay.
And no, it just basically I wanted to ask the question, like, how the fuck do I do that? Like, are there tools? Are there good ways to go about approaching that in a way that will be, great for my partner?
I call it taking as a service.
Yeah, if you can really drop into like not touching them how you think they're gonna love it, but really, really drop into like what turns you on about their body and how can you really take it. And it's hot when they know that they can give you the gift of that.
Yeah.
And vice versa. Once you really get into taking, then you can be objectified and actually feels good.
Sure.
Because you are going, it's like take pleasure in my body and my pussy and my ass, whatever the thing is, right? Yeah.
I just
Is
think,
that, did you want to add to that?
Yeah,
of
I mean,
like,
it's such a beautiful thing because it is so very common to hear that from women. That is like, I've been objectified my whole life and it doesn't feel good. And the reason it doesn't feel good is because you didn't agree to it.
Sure. Yeah, Jase.
And when you do agree to it, it feels fucking amazing. And also, you may have partners, men or women, that yearn for that. They yearn to feel taken from and sexy and desired. And so when your body is being used as a tool for someone else's desire, that's a beautiful thing. It's like one of the most nourishing and healing things as a man to feel taken from in that way.
Yeah.
and there's something also that in your nervous system that can become healed and nourished like on a deep level. So if you have had things in the past that have been felt really wrong, there's a way to bring it back in to actually feel really good about it. And there's a lot of deep healing there. Yeah.
It's funny you mentioned that because I had an experience kind of on the opposite side from what Emily was talking about at the workshop where we were doing the exercise where you would partner up and ask to do something to the other person for your own pleasure, like we're talking about. And
May I do this to you for my pleasure? Yeah.
Right. And, my partner asked, she's like, could I sit behind you and just kind of like touch or squeeze like your shoulders and like your muscles or your arms or your chest or whatever? And, it's like, sure, yeah. And I had this weird thing of at first feeling like, oh, I'm getting a massage or something, right? And then being like, wait, no, this is for her. And I just had this, like, this doesn't compute. Like, I'm just sitting here and she's getting something out of it. Like, as a man, I feel like for the most part, my body has been valued for what it can do and not just what it is.
Wow.
And that was this, just like,
I feel like women, it's very much been the opposite.
Absolutely.
Because I thought about the fact that when it was that part of the workshop and I was trying to think of like, what would I want to take from a male partner for my own pleasure? And I'm like, I don't know, because I've been so conditioned to like, he's the observer, I'm the observed. I'm the consumed thing, he's the thing that does the consuming.
Interesting language
And
there.
like, I think that a lot of us have been conditioned to kind of to learn how to take pleasure in that one way or another.
Even slip into enduring.
Or slipping into just enduring it, because this is just what the dynamic is. And so, and the thing is that it's like when I sat with it and it's like, I know there's definitely a deep part of me that would love to take, especially from a male partner for my pleasure, but has like never even been, that's never seen the light of day, really.
We can practice when we're done.
That could be such a hot like date night, like even setting the tension of like, hey, there's something I really want to play with you. Would you be willing to play? And they can go, yeah. And then you can kind of just lay out the ground, the parameters and try it, even with simple touch or massage or kissing or whatever. It's
And you have to remind your partner too, like as men, the doing is hard to break. Your partner will reach up to participate and you have to smack their hand. When she's taking from me, she'll just like, I'll reach up, I'll be like, oh, and it just smacks my hand down and I'm like, oh yeah, right, I'm the fuck toy right now.
And loving it.
And loving it. And then when you can really drop into that space, I honestly have never felt anything more nourishing sexually than being in a totally non-doing, pleasurable state. And actually it took not a long time, but a fair amount of time to rewire my arousal
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Because laying on my back, I couldn't even really access an erection or arousal for a bit in there. And I just had to really drop in and relax. And so that's something that often, like I will present to male clients when they're having issues with erection, where sometimes you don't want to be doing, your body's not in a space of doing. And actually blood flow to your penis or your cock or whatever is about relaxation. So if you can get out of your mind and into your body and relax, and all of a sudden there's this access to arousal that's a different one than we're used to.
Yeah.
Than we're used to consuming. I like that you use that, like the consumed and the consumer.
Yeah.
That we're not always in that space. So
Yeah.
there's like a real gentleness and tenderness that comes from dropping into that relaxing space.
Yeah.
Right, definitely.
Amazing.
Well, I'm going to give us the equivalent of a cold shower for a second to talk about. Take a break for ads.
I know. We're like, okay. Need a moment.
We're going to take a quick break to talk about some ways that you can support this show and help this keep going. And the first of those is to join our community on Patreon. Patreon, we've talked about this a lot during our tour in meeting our patrons live, is that in addition to just financially, that Patreon and the support we get from our listeners is what allows us to do this at all, and to go and continue doing this podcast and to keep growing it and to travel more places and do these live events. Like literally that would not be possible without that support. But in addition to that, it's also really provided us with this amazing community that we didn't expect, that we didn't set out with the intention of making a community, but it's formed around that. And a big part of that is our private invite-only Facebook group that patrons can get access to, as well as like our monthly video discussion groups that we have for more direct one-on-one processing. And just like not only for them to be in a community where they can talk about these things and not instantly be judged for their relationships, but also what we get from that, like learning how we can be better, how we can improve this podcast. And our patrons are the people who get that most immediate, feedback and stuff with us. Has just been really incredible. So if you want to support this show and become part of that Patreon community, you can go to patreon.com/multiamory, and you can choose an amount that's comfortable to you to donate every month to us to help keep this going. And we would love to have you as part of that community.
Okay. Another thing that you can do, especially if it's just not accessible to you right now to be able to donate via Patreon, is you can just leave us a review on iTunes or Apple Podcasts or Stitcher or wherever fine podcasts are sold. The reviews really do help us. It takes less than 2 minutes of your time to leave us a rating or just write us a couple quick sentences as a review. It helps people to find our podcast. It helps us to show up higher in search results. It helps people to know what to expect from the podcast. So it's really great if you share what you've gotten out of the podcast, or if there's any particular episodes you recommend people start with. It really does help us. So again, just go to iTunes, Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen to this podcast, and leave us a quick review.
Also, we have merch. If you go to multiamory.com/store, you can find t-shirts, hoodies, you can find yoga pants or things like that. And it's really awesome. A lot of people actually will buy the merch that we have that doesn't say Multiamory on it, but just has our logo. And we've thought of that as kind of our secret bat signal. If you don't want to be totally out, don't want like the word Multiamory flashed everywhere, you can actually just have the logo on and then see maybe at the gym someone else with the logo and they're like, is that what I think it is? And then you've made a new best friend. So
and it's happened. It's confirmed that
it definitely has happened.
Works. Yeah,
absolutely. And we really appreciate all the patrons of ours on the tour who wore our merch to our shows.
So
we
cool
loved seeing that. That was really cool. So again, if you want to get any of our merch, go to multiamory.com/store.
And I got some nice compliments during the tour on how comfy the shirts are.
They are. They're
good.
so comfy.
They were like, I was expecting this to be one of those stiff like
Those
band
crappy
t-shirts.
shirts.
No.
And they're like, no, this is actually really comfortable.
Yeah, they're really soft and nice. We love them.
Yeah. And the last thing is that our sponsor for this episode is Audible. If you like listening to audiobooks in addition to podcasts, I feel like we have some overlapping audiences there with audiobooks. You can go to audibletrial.com/multiamory, and there you can get a free 30-day trial that comes with a free audiobook. And you two had some recommendations of some books that our listeners could look up.
Yeah, there's definitely quite a few. There is some that we've taken in our sexological bodywork training or somatic sex educator training. And there's, Women's Anatomy of Arousal by Sherry Winston. Anything by Peter Levine is really special for people that are really interested in like learning about the nervous system, learning about how trauma gets into the body and how to, unwind it.
Yeah. I see you have a long list on your phone there.
Yeah, what was that one that we came at the beginning?
The Body Keeps Score.
Well, The Ethical Slut is an amazing gateway book for sure.
Yes.
A lot of people.
For everything.
Yeah.
No.
The Body Keeps Score, right? That's one. And just a note about like the Women's Anatomy of Arousal is a beautiful book, and there's some gender stereotypes in that book. So just be aware that, things evolve and new language comes out. And so it's great information though. So when it says tips for men, that can be tips for everyone. Let's just agree to that.
Right. Awesome.
Excellent.
Thank you.
No, thank you so much. But yeah, if you do sign up for the free trial, you don't even have to keep doing it, and Audible will contribute some money to our podcast to help it keep going.
You still get a free audiobook.
And you still get the free audiobook. So it's really a win-win for everybody. And if you're like me or Dedeker, we end up keeping our subscriptions because it's great. I love listening to audiobooks.
Yeah. It's awesome.
All right, let's get back into this.
Yeah, so I would love to take us back in.
Right.
As we've mentioned, all three of us had these really interesting, profound, different experiences as a result of the workshop. And one of the exercises that you did was an exercise of kind of helped people to figure out what yes and no feels like in the body. And so, we partnered up, Emily and I partnered up, and we had to ask each other these different questions of like, may I do this or will you do this? But the answer from the other person had to be a no every single time. And then we also, switched to where the answer had to be a yes, but you didn't do the action. You just had to answer yes to the question. And that was so interesting to me because for me, her asking me a bunch of questions of things that would have been a yes answer, things that I would have liked to have done, but have to say no. I think, again, for me as a woman, I don't have a lot of that experience of saying no when it is a yes. It's more of like saying yes or giving an implicit yes when it's really a no inside my body. And so that was like a really, really fascinating, brand new experience for me of saying no when it is a yes. And I know that there were some men in the workshop having the new experience of saying yes when it is a deep, disgusted no inside
a lot
the
of
body.
men seem very disgusted at
And
times.
it seems my impression of like they never had that experience before.
Yeah.
Is that something that people uncover frequently in your workshops?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just getting in touch with the different answers and how they feel in the body, because sometimes we don't really even notice that. And so it's something happens in people like, wow, I said something and that wasn't true inside. Like, how do I get these two things to match, which is the big aha. What about you, Cosmo?
Yeah, I mean, two things. One, I was so curious to ask the men specifically what was causing that reaction, but I wanted to respect their individual space between them.
Yeah. I definitely tried to push my partner because I was paired with a male partner for that. And I definitely was like, I'm going to push him on the things that I'll ask to do that I know that he has to say yes to. Not that we're going to do it, but just so he could have that experience.
Yeah.
Nice.
And he was one of the men who made that comment of like, wow, that
felt disgusting in my body.
Right.
Yeah. And that exercise is specifically for that. It's about imprinting the recognition of what something feels like that's opposite to what you're saying. And then being able to take that out into your everyday life. And not specifically, again, I like to keep saying that we work within the realm of sexuality, but these tools are about accessing this to better your life in general, not just your sex life.
Yeah.
Like someone wants to borrow your car, sure. And when inside you're like, fuck,
And then you feel that.
We really want it to match. It's really beautiful when you're really in integrity and someone can receive your yes, they can also receive your no and your maybe. Like that. This is the whole culture that we're,
Trying to
maybe even
growing,
celebrate it.
Celebrating all the answers, for
One of the women in the workshop said, wow, I just realized that I thought that was a baseline of how I was supposed to feel. I just thought that's how I felt.
Yeah.
And then she said, oh, I don't have to feel that way. I don't just have to say yes. Like when she had the opportunity to say no, she said that there was a resolution. There was something that shifted in her body that felt at ease, that felt different. And that's like, wow, like that. again, sure, it applies to sexuality, but that goes so much deeper than sexuality. That's at the grocery store. That's letting someone budge in line in front of you. That's something that your doctor says to you, take this medication. Yes, no problem. Did you, being able to feel the truth of what that feels like, and then have the recognition of how to start implementing that into your life.
Yeah.
So that then you feel it. Yeah.
Yeah. Otherwise, you're just overriding that natural system, which always feels like shit.
Yeah.
You know?
Our bodies are so finely tuned. They're such beautiful instruments. And when we get into the habit, the pattern, like you said something, Dedeker, earlier about just about slipping into enduring and disassociating. And so that we have these, maybe you have the opportunity with a lover where it's a beautiful experience, but you're so used to slipping there that you're not even really fully present with it. And so it's about being present with life by not putting our bodies into a constant state of trauma or distrust with our choices.
Yeah. And just constantly saying yes all the time, because I'm so bad at saying no. And that means like I had 3 restaurant jobs at one time because I couldn't say no to 2 of them.
To the shift, or
or just like somebody was like, "Oh, I want you to work with me," and I said, "Sure, I'll do it." And then I never had a life, for example, and just things like that, and really being able to say no and mean it and be okay with that, and not just constantly say yes. It's so profound, and it needs to happen, especially for those of us who are shitty at it.
Seriously.
Yeah.
And Dedeker, you said something earlier too about that you may not have really specific large traumas in your life, but like I call that micro traumas, that we're like, we all are carrying a certain level of trauma in our body, even if we don't have something major to reflect upon. Oh, it's this and we have to get over that. It's actually these tiny little traumas along the way that build up into this like, fuck no. And hopefully you can come out with that and then start to celebrate your no and celebrate your yes.
Yeah. The example from the workshop of men having that experience of saying yes when they mean no for the first time, I feel like that's super powerful. And that's something that I wish there was a way to get that out there more. I found that for me, the first time I experienced that in like a workshop setting was a different consent workshop, which was a similar thing of like asking for something and you have to say no, or then asking for something and you have to say yes. But what I found was, for me in my life, the first time I really experienced that myself was when I first sort of opened myself up to having sexual relationships with men. And that then all of a sudden I started experiencing some of these things, not right away, but just those little things, and then some slightly more major ones where it was like, wow, I hated everything about what just happened. And I'm like really like traumatized and upset about it, but I never said no to it. And it's that thing that I had never understood before when I was only the male in a heterosexual relationship with women, because it was following these gender roles that we don't even question. And for me, that was like a shocking, I had a lot to deal with and process in coming to terms with that. And then it put my own interactions from the past in a different light. It was just like, fuck me, like I suck. Like I can't believe, because I just didn't know.
Yeah, get to feel it.
I think just like if more of us men, especially heterosexual men, but I think really everybody could have that experience of seeing what those are like. I mean, my hope is that those men from the workshop are able to kind of go back and go, geez, I didn't quite realize what my female partners were getting at if they ever said like, oh, I felt pressured into this thing, or like I couldn't say no, or, something like that, to go, oh God, like, yeah, I have a taste of what that feels like.
That's a really big thing to know right now in this very volatile time when I think, things like that have been questioned and so few people actually know what that experience is like.
Yeah.
And then caring.
Yeah.
Right. So instead of being defensive, oh, well, you said yes.
Yes.
Instead of caring, there's 2 things. Both caring so that you want to know and you're like, thank you for sharing. That's a vulnerable thing to share to a partner, that actually I felt like what we were doing was not, my body wasn't totally consenting to it. And then from the other side is also being solution oriented. So not blaming when maybe you did consent to something and and then you slipped out of consent within your body but did not vocalize that to your partner.
Yeah.
So from where they're coming from, they're in a place of consent. They're in a mindset that the person they're engaging with it's a consensual act.
Yeah.
If you don't communicate that. So that's why we have to be in this like solution-based space around educating with language and experience, so that we don't start pointing fingers and creating this divide between the masculine and the feminine and start claiming toxic masculinity when really it's a lack of education.
Yeah.
Not in all cases. This is like void of very specific abuse scenarios.
Right.
But when we're just dealing with individuals interacting on a regular basis, there are lots of traumas that are happening just because of not having the education around language.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
That reminds me of a story I want to share with a partner of mine that we were like, I forget how we even came to this realization, but like there was a particular like sex act that both of us would do like to each other. And for me, it was always like enduring. It was always just enduring. It was like, well, he enjoys this. This is good for him. I'm going to endure this. Until it somehow came out that he felt the same exact thing. That he was enduring it too. Because he assumed
wow.
like,
Oh my
she
goodness.
enjoys this.
Yeah, who is
I'm gonna
this
do
for?
it.
Oh, I've had
And
this
so like,
talk
I'll
too
just
with
deal with
people.
it. And we were both just like, like mind blown. We're like, well, let's not fucking do that anymore. But again, it was that same thing where it was like, instead of even saying, hey, this doesn't feel good, or hey, can I try doing it a different way, I automatically was just like, I'm just going to endure it. And then the fact that he did too. And talk about just how much we need like that communication, or just even just one person to finally speak up and be like, hey, actually, you know what? Like, let's change this.
Is this working for you?
Yeah.
It's not really like...
Exactly.
Yeah, because if somebody is in their pleasure and you're allowing, maybe you're not enduring, maybe you are enduring, and you can find a place of allowing.
Right.
But because you know it's for their pleasure. But if nobody's in their pleasure, why are we doing this?
Exactly.
Who is it for?
It was that one. It was like, really, no one's in their pleasure.
Let's not do this ever again.
Yeah.
So when you have a new partner, or when you just meet someone, even at the grocery store, or anyone in general who doesn't have a language for what we're talking about here, what do you do? I mean, how can you sort of introduce maybe like a new partner to something like this? Kind of right off the bat.
I have a quick
go
one
ahead.
and then go.
Yeah,
I
please.
laugh because my wife, Caitlin, on every first date walks the people through the wheel of consent.
Wow.
And I just laugh because
You should
I'm
do it like
you-
on a little cocktail napkin.
yeah,
and
like she just draws it
Let's
out.
look
She's
at
like, just so
this.
you know, in our interactions, like this is the language that I would like to know you understand before engaging. And
That's great.
Oh,
And,
amazing.
and I mean, she's a sex educator, and so it comes very comfortable.
Of course.
But there are tools to begin that, and so.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it's not always appropriate to like bust out the wheel, even on a napkin. Okay, so before we make out, we're gonna do this thing.
talk about this,
There's a time and a place for it. I mean, if this is someone that you're really like wanting to maybe, be a partnership or date or something like that, then you turn into a game. That's what I do anyway. Like, do you
okay, what's that like?
do you want to practice? Or actually, what I will do is like ask the person, how do you like to be touched? And they're like and it's pretty public, like what I do. So there's curiosity around, what do you teach? What are your workshops like? And so it could be like a conversation at dinner around the concepts of the wheel of consent, just to get to know each other. And then that could turn into like, do you want to see how this plays out in a sexy game or something like that? And you're going to find, once you like learn the concepts of the wheel of consent, you're going to find ways how it goes through your body and how it comes out in your interactions. Like if I'm at a play party, for example, I will just use certain languaging, but I'm not going to turn it into like an educational thing, because it's not really the time or the place for that, because you're in a loud place, there's bodies everywhere. But there's small ways that you can do it inside your body, and then also see what their response is. And then you can turn the conversation to, what would you like, for your pleasure, and really check in. So you're actually giving them the experience of the wheel without drawing it out.
Right.
Yeah.
And later you can follow it up, or maybe it comes in a different way.
And there's Betty Martin again on her website has this 3-minute game that
cool.
anyone can download and play with their partners.
And we've done it at play parties too. A lot of play parties will have like an educational piece in the beginning, right? Or like in a speaker or something like that. And so we'll present the 3-minute game and bring out tools and like fun toys and like little things, and we'll get people into their bodies and like play the game, have the 3-minute game. It's a contained time to actually experience what do I want with this person and how do I ask for it. And then that turns into the play party, which everyone has a basic baseline of the language.
And I mean, anytime you can lengthen play, that's fun. Like if you're like, I mean, even with a new partner, without the whole explanation, if you just say, I really like this, I like to be asked where you touch me and how you want to touch me. And then all of a sudden it's like, whoa, like, there's this charge like, right? I would like to touch your shoulder. Could I kiss your neck? You know, and it becomes this really fun, super charged and actually really, really sexy engagement.
Right.
Super hot.
That really stretches out the pleasure too, right? Why, like, sometimes we rush in and, you know, and that's where like, you know, before everyone's genitals are ready and before your bodies are integrated. And so it gives an opportunity for energies to align before moving into these more intense expressions of pleasure.
I think just the idea that a new partner and you would have this from the beginning sounds so awesome. Instead of like, and obviously people are learning this and they can learn it even in an established relationship, but coming at a new relationship with this and just having that be the way in which you interact with each other from the beginning sounds wonderful.
And it's such a powerful tool to bring in even in established relationships of like, wow, this changes how I'm going to communicate and treat you now.
I just wanted to, you know, because I think that, like you mentioned, that, you know, you don't have to bust out the cocktail napkin, that you can change your language and how you actively ask someone how they like to be touched, or ask them, do you want this faster, slower? Is this pressure still working for you? Or do you want it lighter, whatever? I found for me that recently it's also been not just about changing the way I talk to the other person, but just like really trying to have integrity about speaking up if I am enduring something, or speaking up if something's not working for me. And that has been like the hardest habit to break after so many years of just kind of taking it, or just kind of like settling for like, well, this is kind of pleasurable, I'll just kind of take what I can get. And that's really hard to do. I've never regretted it anytime that I have, you know, anytime that I have actually spoken up and said like, oh, actually, could you do this? Could you touch me this way? Can you try this angle? That of course it feels better, and then it's so much better, but it's still so hard to break that ingrained habit after so many years of doing it.
I loved in the workshop when we were doing that, when it was the other way, where it's I'm doing something to you for you, that you said, you know, to be giving direction throughout, if like, oh, could you do that a little bit harder, a little softer? Could you move onto my shoulder, or whatever it was, like if it was a massage or something, was that the person receiving that should just say thank you. Rather than taking it personally about you when they're just telling you what their body likes. But I find that I feel like I've gotten comments from both of you that you've had partners, especially male partners, who you'll say, oh, can you do that a little bit differently? And they kind of seem miffed about it, or just don't take the note,
or say sorry.
It's either saying sorry, or it's like taking it personally, or the one that really baffles me is like, they just don't take the note, where I can say 3 times in the space of 5 minutes, can you go a little slower?
Have you tried saying like, I would really like it if you would slow down? You can turn it into dirty talk too. So it's not like, I'm going to give these instructions, because it can also like interrupt the intimacy. So
that changes
maybe
the
there's a
dynamic.
different way that you could say it.
Yeah, that's true. I could definitely try that.
Wow, that's interesting. I feel like I've done something like that sometimes, again, to kind of soften it, so they don't feel like I'm saying you're doing it badly. You're bad at this.
Get your inner coach out.
That's interesting. That's really interesting.
Yeah.
I was just I also wanted to mention that I love the idea of like drawing this on the cocktail napkin and having the explanation, because we've actually talked before about doing the same sort of thing with talking about sexual health and STIs, is to talk about it just as a conversation piece during a first date, for example.
Absolutely.
Of just, oh, you know what? I was just listening. And we always love to give the excuse of, I was just listening to this podcast when they were talking about STIs, and like, oh, I just had my checkup a couple months ago, and these were my results, and I learned these cool things from the podcast, of just, so it's not like I'm asking about your status because I want to have sex with you. It's like before we're even there. Because that's, people are always like, well, I don't want to kill the mood there.
Yeah.
Or I don't want to ask about it early because then they're like, whoa, why are you asking about this? We're not there yet. Is to just bring it up conversationally. And I feel like this could be sort of the exact same thing of just in that sort of getting to know you conversation. It's like, have that in your repertoire of like, this is a thing I bring up on first dates to talk about. This is a cool thing I learned about. I found this really fascinating.
Just like, this is a thing I'm really interested in.
Absolutely.
Right.
And then you're also promoting good practice.
Totally.
Right.
Yeah.
Right? Whether you're going to date this person or not.
Right.
Yeah.
Then they're
'Cause it
just like,
gets
oh, they
easier.
learn about Betty Martin's Wheel of Consent, which is going to affect every other relationship in their life.
Right.
They're learning about, that you can go get tested regularly and how that impacts, relating to partners.
Yeah. But and I think that in part of having that conversation, it gives you a chance early on before you're in a potentially more compromising situation to see how they react to those conversations.
Yeah, that's a big one. Like
Yeah.
if I meet someone and I can just tell by their body language that they can't really access their yes and no and maybe, I would just treat it differently, and maybe I wouldn't engage. I would make the choice how far I want to engage. Same with like STIs. Once you know the information, right, you can make an informed decision on how am I going to interact with this person now with this information.
Yeah, but just even how they react.
Yeah.
If they're like super uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Or even for some people I know, like if they talk about STIs and someone uses terms like, oh, well, I'm clean.
Right.
That to them, it's an
That's a big
indication of
one.
like, you don't really know enough about this.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
let's maybe not until we can either have that conversation or maybe just not, period.
Right.
Right. That and I could see with this a similar thing where like, if they immediately go to a defensive place or like a legalistic place about it, you might be like, I don't think we're ready to go here.
Yeah.
Because you're not capable of having this conversation with me in a
Not
way
the
that
same level.
feels respectful to me and all that.
I
Absolutely.
very much felt that where I've just, maybe met someone, said, let's have a date, and not necessarily bringing up specifics around STI testing or the Wheel of Consent, but just generally interacting with them and like a lack of eye contact or confidence in there. And I can already sense some type of lack of clarity or power imbalance. And it's just like, okay, well, maybe this relationship isn't going to move into this. They may be, attractive and all of that, but are they able to meet you where you're at?
Right.
Not to say that it's better or worse, but just where you're energetically playing in.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I feel like we could talk about these things forever,
I know, right?
but we only have an hour-long podcast. So can you please tell our listeners where they can find out more information about you and the work that you do?
You can you can look up my website, which is sexlovesoul.com. And with all the new hoopla around wording on the internet, I might need to change that. So you can, so I'm Melissa Mango, and you can look up sexlovesoul.com, and you can also find out more about me through Happy Touch. And Cosmo, I'll let you drop the things on that.
Yeah, so you can find us at happytouch.ca. Another project that I'm working on is called the Apollo Project, which is sensual retreats for men. And so that's the-apollo-project.com. Another interesting one, just that I touched on it a little bit, is there's a company I work for that does sensual retreats for women. This is all like intensive 5-6 day retreats where we get to go through all of this information in practice somewhere in a full immersion.
Wow.
And so that's a company called Back to the Body. And that's
cool.
The founder, Pamela Madison, is a mentor and just a beautiful, inspired woman. Also, our training, we're somatic sex educators, so you can go to the SSEA website, which is somaticsexeducators.com or .ca? .com, I think. Yeah, so
we'll look it up. We'll find it out.
so people can explore what we actually do. And if you're interested, eventually, probably in the next month or 2 months, we're going to have an app launched around helping people find access to practitioners so that they can explore these types of things in a very safe container.
Yeah.
And learn how to then go engage with partners in this way.
Yeah. Fantastic.
Excellent. Well, that was
All
great.
right. Thank you so much for taking the time and letting us come into your lovely studio here
Yes.
to do this. If you, the listener, would like to have your question or comment played on our show, you can call our number at area code 678 MULTI05. Or you can leave us a voice message or an audio message on the Multiamory Facebook page. You can also email us at info@multiamory.com or send us a message on Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram. To support our show and join our private Facebook community, go to patreon.com/multiamory. Multiamory is created and produced by Emily Matlack, Dedeker Winston, and me, Jase Lindgren. Our episodes are edited by Mauricio. Our social media wizard is Will McMillan. Our theme song is Forms I Know I Did by Josh and Anand from the Fractal Cave EP. The full transcript of this episode is available on its page at multiamory.com.